Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
It's a joy to introduce our dear friend, Mary Kretzmann. Mary's a long-time devotee, disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. She's been the head of the Healing Prayer Ministry for a number of years. And she's a mother, a grandmother. Anyway, it's a joy to have Mary with us this morning and to tune into Divine Mother's healing energy. And she's going to begin today with some chanting, and then we'll have the workshop with her in the morning. There'll be a break at about 1 p.m., and we have some refreshments and soup, and I think we should have enough food for everyone. And then there'll be more time in the afternoon. And after the workshop in the afternoon, there'll be time where Mary can do book signing and you can connect with her personally.
So part of the way I teach these workshops is it's partly instructional and it's inspirational, and I lead it as though it's an ongoing healing prayer session, but with instruction in between. So I want to, pull you along. So in that light, I want to open with a prayer, and I want you to pray according to your inner heart. Part of our prayer has saints of all religions, so you insert that. But what I'm doing is invoking the light of our avatars and masters into this room to enliven everything we do today, and also to have a protective healing light within us and around us for any of the prayer concerns that come up today. When you think of it, what's a healing prayer ministry all about? It always starts with a sad story, right? Something needs prayers. It's not like I went out on a sailboat ride and everything was great, That's a testimony of a lovely day. But a prayer request has, on some level, something went wrong. And something needs added grace, something needs added light. So that's why we even start with light. So out of respect for wherever your highest and lightest and brightest is coming from, wherever it is, you invoke that too. We start by saying, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, let that be the universal Mother, Father, God. And we're calling it in. So it's not just addressing, we are invoking. The name of this prayer is actually the invocation. We're invoking it into ourselves, into this room, and into our lives to help with this healing. So you can either just listen respectfully or pray along, however makes the most sense to you. But I do this on behalf of all of us to bring in that highest light, and you can pray along. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Masters of India, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, Saints of all religions, we bow at your feet. Fill us with thy light. Fill this room with thy light. We invoke thy healing energy. We invoke legions of healing angels. Flow through us today. Flow through our healing energy. Lord, give us thyself. That we may give thee to all. Om. Peace. I have a few favorite chants for healing. One of them is Joy, Joy, Joy. And another one is Door of My Heart. Some of you may be familiar, and another one is I Am Om. So, is anybody here I guess you're all on the mailing list, is it anyone's first time coming to this center today? Okay, so it's kind of new stuff, okay. Why don't we start with joy, joy, joy? Yogananda wrote this poem and this chant when he came out of samadhi, or I don't know if he was ever truly out of samadhi, but you get the idea. What if all you could say was joy, joy, joy? There was nothing else that needed to be written, needed to be said. Joy, 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 ever new joy. And think of the ocean. When you think of what's ever new joy, think of how you love to watch the waves, as I love to watch the waves. Everybody seems to love to watch the waves come in. But you know another one's coming. It's going to look pretty much like the last wave, but it's still new, right? And it's coming from the infinite sea, wave upon wave upon wave. It's ever new waves in the same way. But if that ocean of infinity was just rolling in joy, 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 ongoing waves of joy. And you can chant this sort of declaratively as he was doing. It was his state of being. Or you can chant it affirmatively, that this is what you're aspiring to, and that you want to grab it. And it has power, even that, just recognizing the truth of that infinite sea, and then chanting as though to touch the hem of the garment. It then brings some of that. There's a story of a woman who was in prison for a crime she didn't actually commit, but there's no accidents. You know, usually I think in those cases maybe there was a crime in another life they did get away with, who knows, you know. But when she was turned down yet again for probation, and it was now 20 years, or it's getting onwards of 20 years, she was crushed, and she had become a devotee in prison, she had been teaching meditation, she had been leading an exemplary life, and yet even so, probation was denied. And she went out in the prison yard and just walked along the chain link fence and just inwardly kept chanting joy, 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 ever new joy. She was reaching for that joy because she would otherwise be crushed. So that's what I mean about even chanting affirmatively. And then she said she honestly did touch that joy, because the joy is eternal. The joy is non-conditional. The joy is there, but sometimes we have to be happy or joyful in spite of and not because of. And that's where the power of this chant comes in as a healing chant. At a certain point I'll sing the dust chant, but you can sing along if you know it, and it's very easy. It's joy, 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 ever new joy. Joy, 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 ever new joy, 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 to you, or you can simply reach up to this point between the eyebrows and call to God's grace, reveal thyself. Reveal thyself. Now let's rub the palms together. You can put them out to the side receptively like this. And then chant in the healing power of Om into body, mind, and soul. In our healing, we often use Om, so I'm going to teach you a little bit about chanting Om. I see. So this is just a little bit preliminary, then we'll get into some healing prayers, but Om can be used for self-healing. Years ago, a woman called me, she wanted a healing session immediately, because her husband had just informed her he was moving to Germany to be with another woman that he'd met on a business trip. And so, of course, she was devastated. To his credit, he's still with that woman, the one in Germany. And that was 23 years ago, so we'll give him points for that. But she was devastated, and she wanted to see me that morning. And I understood. I thought that was valid for the level of heartbreak. However, I had a 2-year-old. And I wouldn't bring that kind of pain into the house. And I didn't have access to a babysitter till the next day. So I said, I'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, I want you to go to your meditation room, sit there at your altar, and go to the center of the pain and chant Om there 15 times. Because what do we usually do with pain? We try to hold back from it, try to avoid it, and she did that, and it changed her life. How is that possible? For 15 Oms to change her life. Let's say it redirected her life and she had to follow through. But what it did is, instead of that pain crushing her and pulling her down, she had been an emotional person too. It's not as though it might have that emotional nature. She always had needed bolstering up by the rest of us. But that emotional nature, like what Swami Ananda says, the heart is like a lotus, but the petals are either pointing down or you point it up. And so by chanting Om at the center of the heart, but then lifting up, and I'll do most of my teaching standing up, because the shorter people can't quite see me. But that's what redirected her life. She redirected the pattern of having her energy go down to her emotional center, and instead having her all that same power going upwards to the point between the eyebrows, the point of upliftment. And she helped she went to a different city, helped at a meditation center, really worked hard, and then just focused her energy. She's just, I'm going to serve. And she met a wonderful man, and she's married to him. Now, that's not the only outcome to the story, but that's a nice outcome. I mean, in other words, somebody could also be equally uplifted even if they didn't find a new man, but that was her story. And she never quite had to be bolstered up in the same way. That's what it changed her life. So that's why I want to go a little bit into Om, because we use it for healing. One thing Yogananda says is that the Om represents the 3 aspects. Well, there's many aspects of God, but for this discussion, I'll come over it a little bit. There's the creator aspect of God, the sustainer aspect, and the dissolving aspect. So, and he says when these are balanced, this equals healing. When these are balanced in an uplifting way, this is healing. So that's why I'm going into Om. Because you know, there's the expression, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So that's the dissolver, the bathwater, you might say, but you're throwing everything out, even the new surge of energy you need. But if this big wheel is going in a balanced way of the creator energy, bringing in the new, the sustaining energy, sustaining that which is good, and the dissolving energy, removing that which is not helpful to your journey at this point. If they're balanced, that equals healing. And this can be happening on a cellular level, on a karmic level, etc. So, for example, I have lots of stories, but so another time I was helping at an evening program in Ananda village, that's where I live. It's a yoga community up in the foothills, and I've lived there a long time. I'm trying to do the math, more than 3 decades, so almost 4. So yeah, almost 4 decades, jeez. So anyways, so there was an evening program, and I was helping with chanting, like I just did, and then one of the directors of the community, it was a 6-hour program honoring the guru. So there's a lot of chanting and meditation and sometimes stories, and I was just scheduled to help with chanting. She leans over and says, will you give a 5-minute presentation on the guru? I said, okay. I said, when? She goes, right now. So I stood up, and I thought, what do I say? So I started to go in a little bit into talking about Om and how the guru can come through this. But what I also knew was going on, that a woman in the community was challenged because she had a good marriage, but she also was working with a good man. And there was enough karmic connection that this was confusing to her, because she was falling in love with the other man, even though she was already married to an equally good man. So, you know, these things happen. So, and her husband just said, you figure it out. I don't know what to tell you. But, so, what I could see happening when I was talking about Om, I could see the light go on in her eyes. Because I was talking about the aspect of God bringing in the new, sustaining that which is good, and dissolving that which is no longer helpful. But when it's healing, when it's good, it's always in this upward, helpful manner. Now, a destructive manner might be all those things going the wrong way, bringing in a new bad thing, dissolving what's, going downhill. When we were singing Om, that it just did for you, Om, 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 represents those 3 aspects. So the first one is reaching up to the new, Om, and the sustainer, Om. See, sustainer isn't stagnant, it's still moving upward, Om. And then the dissolver is also moving up, Om. As I just was talking about that, and she was just sitting midway back in the audience, I saw the light go on her eyes, and she knew what she was going to do. And she took a new job. It's still in the same general area of service, but not side by side with that man. Sustained the marriage because it was good, but she dissolved the close working relationship with that man, even though he was a good man. But these were now all working upwards, and she's still married to him. This was years ago, and they're still happy, and it all works out. But it was just from that simple understanding of that balance. See, those 3 aspects were imbalanced, and then she was healed, her marriage was healed, and ultimately her work life was also healed, because it didn't bring in this confusion. Now, there's other times, I know, where something is truly toxic, and then you're dissolved, maybe that needs to be dissolved too. So I'm just giving this aspect just for the understanding of Om, and how that simple understanding helped her to know what to do. So I want to help you. We can chant that Om, and then I'll let the singing Om, and then I'll do just the regular chanted Om. But let's chant Om. 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 Sound is also always use. Don't just use the M as a cap on the end of Om. Like a lot of times people will chant Om. No, the M sound is almost 1/3 because the M also represents the dissolver. So the other parts, usually we would spell Om metaphysically is represented by the letters A, U, and M, and so that's the creator, sustainer, dissolver. And in some spiritual paths, they actually make a big deal of differentiating that. I think I don't know which group it was. A very classic kind of Indian group might make a big point of like, like you might hear that. Well, they're emphasizing those three things. The way Yogananda did it and Kriyananda did it was, it's just blending it more, a chanted Om. But what Yogananda would say is that even when you're chanting Om, there's a slight up scoop to represent it's still moving up. So it's not just it's not like that. It's Om. There's very slight up scoop. And to hear Om chanted beautifully in this way, if you want to, we maybe can play it at the break. Swami Kriyananda chanting Om, and when it was recorded, he'd been chanting Om for 2.5 hours. And then he told the recording engineer, take that last 15 minutes, I was deep in the Om. And that's what the recording's made of. So with that, you'll hear that the M is still part of the Om. It's part of the sound. It's not just a cap at the end of the Om. It's Om. So these things are subtle, but they're important when we're using healing, because we're actually using it as a vibration, as a carrier wave for healing. So let's try that 3 times, and then we'll get into some healing prayers. Teach you a little bit, but one way I like to teach is by doing prayers. Yogananda gave several healing techniques, and some can be used, they're short but powerful, and some are actually, they're longer, and he said stay with it till you feel you've accomplished your object, which would mean that you're going to send deep blessings to somebody. Sometimes they would talk about Yogananda. He might have heard, I think one time there was a case he heard someone had been given a death sentence, and it was something that had been in the news, and the devotees didn't think it was right that this particular person was given it. It wasn't a member or anything like that, but they just thought, no, there was something about that case, and I don't know the particular details. And he listened, and then they had just been part of the conversation. He kind of disappeared for a while. And then he came back, maybe 20 minutes later or something. And then the next day they saw that the governor had pardoned this person. So he just had gone to pray and just send these deep blessings and then it brought things right, you might say, for that particular person. So there's a deeper technique, not deeper, I don't like to qualify that way, but there's a technique that you can sit with deeply for 20 or 30 minutes once you get used to it. I never want you to strain. I want you to do the techniques that are joyful for you. That you say, that's good, I felt something flow through me, I feel complete, I feel done, great. And then other times it grows on you, and you might realize, I can sit a little longer, I'm going to send blessings a little longer. So one thing Yogananda said is to learn to pray the way a mother would pray for her sick child. And how is that? Well, for one thing, a mother's going to shake the heavens. And yet, on the other hand, there's always a point where if the child's suffering immensely, and I don't mean from a short illness, but a long illness or something, if it's very dire, there's another point at which the mother will also say, thy will be done. You know, she'll pray intensely. And you have to think of, where does thy will be done come from? It comes from Jesus. He first made his prayer demand. And then he said, thy will be. Nevertheless, thy will be done. He first said, Lord, let this cup pass from me. But nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. So when people just say, oh, thy will be done, which, you know, it's almost like giving up before you started. If you want to add your prayer energy, but then there's ultimately that surrender into God's hands. And sometimes in that very praying, you may feel guided more, especially when you're praying for somebody else. The direction of your prayer may change and whatnot. So we won't have to go into this too much, but if it comes up in question, we'll address it. My point is, though, you add your energy, you add your blessings to this person, to this situation. And sometimes it can be as simple, like, you guys are on the highways all the time, right? I hope you don't see too many accidents, but if you do, send a prayer. There's a beautiful story from Carolyn Meese. Somebody had told her back years ago when she was teaching, and that had been a woman in London, and there was a car accident. And it was blocking up all the traffic. And the accident was bad enough that the woman left the body. And what she could feel was everyone's perturbance at her for having an accident. But about 9 cars back, she could feel a mother and daughter praying for her. It was so distinct, she memorized, this is the part that amazes me, memorized the license plate in that out-of-body experience, because their prayers gave her the will to live. And so then the ambulances came and she went to the hospital, and it was pretty touch and go. But also amazing to me, when she woke up, she still knew the license plate. And so she asked their equivalent to the DMV, could she know who had that license plate? And so somebody pulled the appropriate strings for her, and she was able to meet that person and say, thank you for praying for me. When she was finally well enough, thank you for praying for me. That made a big difference. Gave me the will to live. And so our prayers are carried. They're like a vibration that carries to a person. And so in the same way, sometimes people will say, sometimes there's remarkable stories, and sometimes it's just like, oh, I felt a blessing, or other people will say, oh, when everyone prayed for me before surgery, I felt it. I felt calmer. I felt more peaceful. They might feel it. And sometimes somebody has a very distinct experience that enlightens us more. And so from a different prayer group, I'd heard this thing. Somebody was praying for their father in another city who was in the hospital. And then later, many of the prayer group went to visit him in the hospital. He says, I saw all of you here the other night. He could see their faces as though in the room with him when he was sick. Now, that's unusual, but I think that energy, it's unusual that he saw it. It's not unusual that that energy was there. So sometimes we see things and learn things that help us to know the power of prayer and also the power of positive thoughts, etc. So, okay, I'll tell you one more story. This kind of brings together 2 little things I wanted to talk about. One, when I would teach workshops at Ananda, a friend would help me with it, and he would do this thing with dowsing rods to measure the aura. Anybody ever done that? No? Like 2 wires? Like 2 coat hangers? But what you've done that, okay.
No, Marianne did it today.
You did it? Maybe I did. Is that what you said? He did it?
You did it on me.
Oh, you did this?
This one is.
Co-haters. Okay, good, okay. Okay, so what's interesting about it, like the healer will feel the aura anyway, but makes it demonstrable to the group. So we would do different things, like sometimes he would put a signed copy of autobiography of Yogi, so Yogananda's signatures in a brown paper bag, and the person would hold it, and we'd measure their aura beforehand. And a lot of people's aura is about this big, at least what we could measure with the co-haters, you know. And then they'd hold that behind their back, and their aura would be way bigger than this room. Just the holiness of that book. In the same way, sometimes people would call me on the phone and say, "What's the holiest thing you've got in your house? And let's talk." And it might be the Bible, it might be the autobiography. I said, "Go get it, let's talk." And if it was a serious thing, I said, I just want to know what you've got, and then we'll start, because this might be a stranger out of the blue. So you can see there was this holy vibration just from them holding it in a bag and not knowing what they're holding. So, and then he would sometimes put, is it Schultz Yetsen's book that he wrote about the prison system in Russia before when it was still USSR. That's an intense book. And you have that in a brown paper bag. And usually if people were holding that, their aura would get very condensed. But then one day, I was kind of sitting next to the person who would be standing there holding the bag, and he was at the other end of the room. And I knew, because he'd already done the autobiography, I knew what was in the next bag, but he wouldn't tell anybody. And then her aura was huge. He keeps going back and back, and then he looks at me and goes, I said, "Oh, we have to ask her what happened." Because I was sitting there. Is that my phone? Is that outside? Oh, well, I'm to the CD. Because I had first but because I was sitting there, I don't know if I was across the room if I would have felt this. I felt her aura first go like this, and then go. And so I said, "What happened?" She goes, and so she was kind of a healer herself. She says, "Well, when I was holding the bag, I could feel all the pain in whatever that book was about." She didn't know the book. And so I started praying for all the people in it. And so we were actually, therefore, measuring the power of prayer, with that story. So that the aura reacts, and yet we also have control. If something's happening, we can become a vehicle again for prayer, for grace, and then that uplifts us. And so the healing prayers are also very beautiful that way, because a lot of people will say, it adds so much to my meditation time to be doing some prayers at the end. Because of what I just described, they become a vehicle. The way Yogananda worded it is, the instrument is blessed by what flows through it. So, and that it also expands you. The same way, what did Jesus say? It's more blessed to give than to receive. It's the same principle. It's not just blessed because it's good karma, but you are more blessed as it goes through you. So are there any questions so far? Okay, I'll give you another chance at that. And also, are any of you already involved in healing work in some way? Okay, great, okay. So some of the things I'm wanting to teach you are universal but can be added to and might help augment your healing practices. So I do invite questions, and if anything's too strange for a first class, then we'll still create an avenue to ask strange questions at some point. Because healing's strange, right? It can get strange. So does anybody want to ask for healing prayers for either yourself or a friend or any kind of situation? Okay.
My daughter,
Rebecca?
Yes.
And now I'm in a prayer group. If you ever have a little prayer group, and I have a little article online how to start a healing prayer group, and it's also in my book. Now that I think about it, you give the person space. Even if they give you one sentence of what's going on, you don't pry or probe more than that. But You could just say, okay, let's pray for Rebecca, or you could say, are you comfortable telling us her age, or just a teensy bit of what's going on without breaking whatever's your comfortable privacy zone about it.
Sure. She's about 16 years old and she's taking advantage of by older man.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. And she's alive and well and living at home again? Or is living somewhere?
She's emotionally,
Right, I get it. I really, she survived it at least on the physical level.
yes.
Okay, good. Oh. So let's pray for Rebecca. Let me ask if others, because I might want to use a different, a three-part technique for her. Are there any other requests? I'll start to hear. Okay.
My teeth have a severe dental injury with a laser, and the bone in my teeth are severely damaged.
By laser?
By laser, yeah, I love it on that laser. Yeah. It's been 10 years. I've never lost to have my teeth, but they're very
I mean, the laser they clean with?
yeah, it's like deep.
Holy moly. Wow. Okay, I didn't know that could happen. So, and what's your name?
Less
Leslie, okay. I'll listen to one more, then because I can only retain so much.
I don't want to sound greedy, but I have eczema on my fingers, and I have digestive issues.
Oh, they might be related, so that's not greedy.
Okay. So.
Okay, great. So okay, we'll schedule in everybody let's pray for Leslie, because this will be a demonstration, and also I do have, it's listed in the book, Dharma Devi can tell you about it too. Oh, we're going to send out a link for it. If you go to ananda.org and then hit the healing tab, you fish around a little, you can find a place to request prayers. I just don't have it up top and center because we were getting flooded, but it is there. And so it makes you have to look at what else we offer. But you can, I would say with something like this, go ahead and put it in, then we pray for a month. And then just be in touch with me or my assistant. And if there's a little bit of change or hope, then it kind of, it shows some receptivity and maybe something's building, okay? So consider this a starting prayer. When we pray for somebody, for one thing, I'll have the person put their hands up, the palms up receptively, and you go ahead and participate, and you'll get to practice with others. And if you feel the grace, just go ahead and sit the next one out, just continue to feel it. This is especially true when we do the longer sessions. Somebody's heart, they feel, oh my God. So you don't say, hey, your time to pray for everybody else, no, snap out of it. You just let them be, and then we'll take it from there. So let's pray for Leslie. So this is the Divine Mother Prayer. There's a Divine Mother Prayer and also a three-part Divine Mother Prayer, which is what I want to do for Rebecca. So, oops. So again, how in the beginning I was talking about we're invoking. So this prayer has an invocation too, because it starts by Divine Mother. So, thou art omnipresent, thou art in all thy children, thou art in Rebecca. Manifest thy healing presence in her body, mind, and soul. And so what's important about this, God's already there, but we're trying to break through whatever the resistance is, and I'm not saying Leslie has resistance, I'm saying the nature of this world has resistance. And we're breaking through that and just bringing Divine Mother's grace. So that's why this prayer is leading us to help us to remember God's there. And that we can then say, manifest thy healing presence in her body, mind, and soul. And then we do 3 ohms. We rub the hands together and do 3 ohms. And the reason we're rubbing the hands together is, I don't know how in some of your healing practices, an important aspect that we're building on today, at the back of the head, like, you can put your fingers in there. Can you feel like the hollow at the back of the neck? That's called the medulla oblongata. And that's what Jesus referred to as the mouth of God. He says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. Because this is where the cosmic energy enters your body. And the light kind of breathes right before you breathe. Like you are sustained by that divine light. That's why it says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. Proceedeth from out here into the body. So when we're doing this, we're sending out Om as though from an instrument of Divine Mother. So I want you to feel this again, that you are a child of God, you're an instrument of Divine Mother, and we're asking for this to flow through us. And when we do the longer, deeper prayers, we accentuate this more, because the healer won't drain themselves with the short prayer I'm doing. But I want you to be conscious of what this is. So first stand up, stretch, and then we can sit to pray, or we can stand to pray, whichever one. But we want our energy awake and ready to do this. So maybe we'll do Rebecca's prayer standing up. Unless anybody wants to sit, you feel free to sit, but I think the energy's more awake. So you can put the hands like a pronoun, which is also a powerful mudra, and I'll explain it later. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent, Thou art in all thy children, Thou art in Rebecca, manifest thy healing presence, in her body, in her mind, in her soul. Hold that energy, and Rebecca, put your hands like this to receive. Oh, that's Leslie, sorry. Did I say Rebecca that whole time? Okay, let's start over. That was a dry one. Oh, well, let's press Rebecca. We just said that. Let's just do it for Rebecca. Leslie. So you can pray like this, but then when we're going to do Om, do this. It's the same as doing the palms. The palms are connected to the heart center. And so you're actually literally receiving. You know how people go outside to feel the sunlight or something? There's actually something dynamic happening there. So I want you to be like this and really receive and not feel like it's too airy-fairy or anything. So, okay. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent, Thou art in all thy children, Thou art in Leslie, manifest thy healing presence, in her body, in her mind, in her soul. And you can either think of Leslie or turn to face Leslie, whatever is comfortable. So it's interesting because we pray for body, mind, and soul, even though it's, teeth. But the thing is, what's going on? Why do we pray for soul? One thing Yogananda says, the English language should have more than one word for soul. in Hindi, in Sanskrit, there's all the aspects and nuances of soul. But he said, at least in the English language, we have the example of Emerson, who would use the word oversoul, or you capitalize S for that perfected level of soul. But, and so in a degree, maybe we're praying for that perfected level of soul to take charge. And the other way I look at it is when you write soul with a small s, it represents that aspect that goes from life to life to life, that collects the karma, you might say. And that really does need healing. And the other is already healed. The soul with the S is perfectly healed and well, and we're maybe trying to rise into that. But sometimes I have seen people healed, this is the more advanced class, by healing a past life. And they might have been healed of something that the doctor says couldn't be healed. And so, because that karma, that little package is way back there, and that access to it, you usually can access it somehow, but the way it came to me is that they had come to a healing session, then I realized, oh, in the course of the healing session, I realized this package was from this past life and needed to be healed there, and it was very effective. Sometimes that has been very effective. Yogananda, in the short thing, Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda gave ways for you to heal your own things through affirmation, working on the subconscious, bringing in the positive. So sometimes you can also work on it by changing the present. So I'm not saying everybody has to go back and heal a past life. I'm just saying the context of having soul in the prayer can come from there. The same way for that woman who was in prison. Why was she in prison? If she, for 20 years, she was in prison longer than the man who pulled the trigger, So we don't know the karma a lot of times. All we can do is help somebody through it. So, so you have the body, the mind, the soul. And that's one reason, because we pray that way, it's, it seems like for the Yogananda's prayers always bless somebody. Do they always create a miracle? Not necessarily, but they're always blessing someone because it's helping their body, their mind, and their soul. And sometimes in that balance is what's perfect for them at that time. I don't like to use that as a cop-out because I think we should always bring whatever energy we can bring to a situation. But there's a beautiful story. Have all of you read Autobiography of Yogi? Yeah, okay. And in there he talks about visiting Therese Newman in Germany, the stigmatist who had the visions of Christ. So I read her book about her visions. And so if you're interested in reading it, I think it's called The Visions of Therese Newman. Otherwise, and it's probably out of print, it probably costs $100, right, $200. But sometimes you get it cheaper. Anyways, the book I read was just about her visions. It wasn't about her, it wasn't about the stigmata, because some of the pictures are intense. And Yogananda went to her and he said, he went into samadhi while she was having the visions, and he said they're true visions. And at another point he said it's because she was Mary Magdalene in another life, and she was given the grace to see the life of Christ. And she could speak Aramaic when she was in that stage and everything. So anyways, the one that's beautiful in terms of healing, he saw her when he was at the Sea of Galilee healing many people. And I believe it struck me as it was the same day when the woman had come up who had had the hemorrhage for 12 years. Because they said people were crowded all around him wanting healing, and she had touched the hem of his garment. And he said, virtue went out of me, which the way Yogananda describes it in his writings is that electric force actually went through Jesus's clothes into that woman's hand because his aura was infusing his clothes, and which is why there's sometimes holy garments or remnants, etc. So it struck me reading this vision that it would be the same type of day, if not the actual same day. That Therese could see him healing many people, blessing many people who wanted physical healing. But she said only about a third of them were healed. But all of them looked blissful and blessed. So the way Yogananda also talks about the avatar, which Jesus was an avatar, only gives complete healing when he's feeling God saying yes now. He feels that divine permission. But the permission's always there to bless and uplift. Because sometimes the journey of healing is to help someone go through it, and sometimes the journey of healing is to just remove it altogether. And if we go back to the play of karma, it's probably in there somewhere, you know. Do any of you know the story? Like, you're familiar with there's sacred mythology from India of Shiva and Ganesha? Raise your hand if you've never heard of Shiva or Ganesha. Okay. That's okay. The way Swami Kriyananda explained it is that some of these divine principles were brought into myth form so people could understand them more. So I'll just talk from just a divine healing point of view. But Ganesha has an elephant trunk, and so he can remove obstacles out of the path. But when I was in India and going to someplace, and this Indian man was driving a couple of us, I said, I love the Shiva Nataraj. It's like a dancing Shiva that every home had. And he goes, oh yes, we all love Shiva, but we love Ganesha more. Because Ganesha removes obstacles. And he says, and he's likely to throw the obstacle in our path. And I thought, why would that be? And I realized, because ultimately, it's not about the healing, it's not about the obstacle, it's about soul union with God. So if the obstacle's actually getting in our way of soul union, that might, and our karma allows it, it might remove the obstacle. If somehow we need that strength to overcome the obstacle, if we need the strength to even stay cheerful and uplifted with the patience of Job, in spite of the obstacle, if that's going to bring us to soul union, God might not take that away, but he may give you the grace to go through it, you see? So it's this balance. So it's not that prayers don't work. If you look at body, mind, and soul, you usually see they're working very well. They just don't, it's just not always like Santa Claus, that's all. And so that, as we pray for body, mind, and soul, I would say I do see that upliftment helping people all the time. And then sometimes we see wonderful physical healing as well. So any questions so far? Okay, let me, this is a great little hammered cup. It's copper. Okay, so. Okay, I think, oh, yes? That's a good question. Well, one thing, Yogananda did give self-healing techniques. So that's, it's in a book called Divine Will Healing. In fact, do you have that copy here? Oh, look at you, Scott. There's some beautiful prayers. If any of you have this book, on page 65. Of course, I didn't bring my glasses. They're in my purse. Are they reading glasses? Regular? Thanks. Pretty. Oh yeah, we might get those. Oh, there we go. All right, I think I'll get right. Thank you very much. I thought it was worth a whirl. Well, I know what I'll do. I'll put bring Dharma Devi into service here. he has, I will have to read something. We'll do one of these, we'll learn it. He has subconscious, there's these 4 affirmations that you say and while you're focusing on one of the chakras, so we'll do some of those. But then what really strikes me, he also has a superconscious method of healing. But his first step is first rise above breath. So are we ready? 1, 2, 3. But then on the other hand, it's so beautiful. I want to read it anyway. So everyone step straight. So this is like, we're shooting for the moon right now with this prayer. And then I'll go to the ones that are more, this is like taken from the highest level. But he says rise above breath. So how would you interpret that? Go breathless? Breathless state? Or that's how I'd interpret it. So we'll just affirm that state if people, just calm the breath for now. But listen to how beautiful this is. Rise above breath. Tune yourself to the cosmic vibration. And with increasing intensity of will and highest devotion, concentrating in between the eyebrows right here, it's the point of concentration, it's the spiritual eye. So concentrating in between the eyebrows, float the following prayers or conviction to the cosmic vibration. So you're communing with God. I like I say, this is the highest thing. I'm just having you shoot for the moon here for a minute. Mentally appeal to the cosmic vibration just as you would to your own father, assuming you had a benevolent father. So this is the first prayer that he wrote. So you just float yourself in that level. O holy vibration, thou art I, thou art I. My soul is thine, thy spirit is mine. Thou art perfect, thou art all. I am thy child, I have all, I have all, I have all. My bouquet of sweetest devotion, my love and highest adoration, I lay in thee, I lay in thee. What is mine, that is thine. What is thine, that is mine. I pray with love, I pray. Be thou mine, be thou mine. So stay in that vibration. I'll read you another one. So you have your choice of these prayers. The second prayer goes, thou art I, thou art I, thou art bliss, I am bliss. Thou art peace, I am peace. Thou art whole, I am whole. Thou art perfect, perfection in mine, is mine. Thou art bliss, I am bliss, I am bliss. So you get the feeling that you rise to that wholeness. And then that becomes healing. It's that wholeness of healing. So those are I'm going to take you from there, but I'm going to lead you to the ones that are more immediately attainable. But you see, some of these can also be used as affirmation, but they're not that willful, charging forth, positive thinking affirmation. You can do them as a prayer and think, I'm gonna reach for that. I'm gonna reach for the hem of that garment, of that energy, and then I'll do his subconscious method of healing. But to not just wait, like, well, I didn't go breathless yet, so I guess I'll go back to page 65. They're so beautiful, and then some, you can also just go, thou art bliss, I am bliss, thou art bliss, I am bliss, and you start to realize it starts to change things. But this one affirmation is called the subconscious method of healing, where you're actually trying to change your subconscious method, your tapes that come from either childhood or the past life, except they're established patterns. So he says focus, there's 4 different ones, and maybe we'll do 2 this morning and 2 in the afternoon, is one way to go. So sit up straight, because you're wanting the energy to go up your spine, which is why I'm saying sit up straight. I'm not trying to be bossy, but it's whatever degree you're able. If you've got an injury, sit however you need to sit. But we're wanting, this one in particular, we're especially wanting the energy to go up the spine. And this short affirmation, another woman wrote to me, out of the blue, she found me on YouTube. And she somehow sent a message to Facebook, and I don't check those messages that aren't your friend. I started to learn you have to sift through them and check them, because this lady says, thank you for that YouTube. It's just a 3-minute YouTube. It changed my life. And it's this affirmation we're about to do. But how can it change your life? Because if it pulled the energy from down to up, that will change your life. Changes your outlook, changes your life. So he says, focus here deeply, and then he says, concentrate your vision and feeling in between the eyebrows. Close your eyes and repeat the following 3 times. I will with my own will.
I will with my own will.
Which flows from the divine will.
Which flows from the divine will.
To be healthy, to be well.
To be healthy, to be well.
To be prosperous and spiritual.
To be prosperous and spiritual.
To be well, to be well.
To be well, to be well.
I will with my own will.
I will with my own will.
Which flows from the divine will.
Which flows from the divine will.
To be healthy, to be well.
To be healthy, to be well.
To be prosperous and spiritual.
To be prosperous and spiritual.
To be well, to be well.
To be well, to be well.
And one more time, again, retaining that concentration at the point between the eyebrows, and saying with quiet intensity, I will with my own will.
I will with my own will.
Which flows from the divine will.
Which flows from the divine will.
To be healthy, to be well.
To be healthy, to be well.
To be prosperous and spiritual.
To be prosperous and spiritual.
To be well, to be well.
To be well, to be well.
So just feel that, how it uplifts the energy in the spine. He calls this a daily affirmation. It's a good one to do every day. And it's also a good one to feel confident to teach to somebody else if they need it. Om. So sometimes Yogananda would combine an affirmation with one of the chakras. That makes it more dynamic than, affirmations themselves are good, because he also wrote affirmations like that. And he has a book, Scientific Healing Affirmations, and then Swami Ananda wrote a book, Affirmations for Self-Healing. They probably sell it here. Both very affordable. So that's a whole method of affirming too, not combining it with a chakra, but then it's also very powerful when it is combined with a chakra. When I was leading a class using the one for the heart chakra, I felt that people often would, even though I said to concentrate on the heart, they're still saying it kind of mentally, the heart affirmation. So I said, okay, we're going to do it with a French accent. So much love, so much love. And it was a small class, so I thought I could get away with it. And this one lady later said, you were driving me crazy making us say it like that. But this man, there were only 4 people in the class. And this man said, he had a very deep experience, and he actually had congestive heart failure. And so I'm not sure if it, and then he went home. I never, that's how classes are. You meet people that day. The point is, what was the energy behind having congestive heart failure? It felt like he really did have a big breakthrough on that energy. And I would imagine it would have at least helped the physical condition. Because the other thing that's happened, some doctors finally went around to people after they had a heart attack. And he just interviewed them, or some researcher. Why do you think you had a heart attack? And they never said it was the food or the cholesterol or anything. It was like, oh, I had this heartbreak. Or there was some disappointment, or my kids left the house and they ate me, or whatever stuff happens in life, And it was always something about the heart. And then it led to these heart problems. And of course you should do what's right and good and healthy. But it's interesting how dynamic that was. And he says not one person, now maybe they were all in denial, but not everyone, just kind of spontaneously. It didn't feel like they were avoiding, they were just sort of answering this question that they, in their heart of hearts, they thought that's what was on their mind. The day after the heart attack, and they're laying in the hospital, they were reviewing these things in their life, and they're trying to let them go or work through that hard, maybe that hardness of heart and letting it go. That's what was in their mind. So, anyway, so maybe raise your hand if you still have prayer requests. I'm gonna see how many. Okay, and I think what I want to do is, since I'm speaking about this heart one, we have time. I want to lead you through the heart one because I told you about it. So, sitting comfortably. In the afternoon, I'll try to lead you through the other two, because they really speak to self-healing, understanding these. So this one thing Yogananda would say, if you're, some of you do healing work from their show of hands, he would say you try to usually, if you're recommending an affirmation, sometimes it might be something very particular for the situation. Like the one we just did was an uplifting one that helps anybody. And like he wouldn't say I'll be opulent and spiritual, but prosperous and spiritual. You can see, like, it costs money to live, right? So the prosperous and spiritual is in that. It's whatever level of prosperity you need to support your life, and that's prosperous and spiritual. So, but he would say sometimes you might want to, give an affirmation that kind of matches the person, or their strong point. Like, so a person who's had a strong mind, you might want to give them one from here, but someone who has a lot of love or devotion, they might want to give them one of the heart-centered things when it applies. Someone who has strong imagination, you might use one of the ones that works on that. And I'll get into that a little more. But, so we'll go through this one. And I used this affirmation once for myself, or maybe more than once, but I had it. Why I chose this, I knew the affirmation. I had a very bad cold and a very bad earache. I did the heart center affirmation. Anyways, it just struck me, like, let's heal on a deep level, whatever this is all about. And, but when I got to the line, and I was going deeper and deeper, when I got to the line that says, I am healthy, I am love, I am whole, I am perfect, I thought, first you're saying it, and then you kind of hit your wall. Can I really say I'm healthy? I wasn't feeling it. But then I thought, then I had to break through to that idealized place. And I broke through that resistance I was talking about, that almost that cellular resistance, and went deeper into the affirmation. And then there was a change. The course of the illness, the earache, it shifted. But it shifted after I shifted. So that's where some of the power is in these things. So let's, actually, before I go into this, I'll tell you a different story. There's to kind of give that point, there's a story, I think it's from the man who wrote Think and Grow Rich, but I'm not sure. Anyways, he'd gone to an industrialist to say, I want to know your secrets of wealth. Somebody correct me. So there's Norman Vincent Peale, but there's another one.
Napoleon Hill.
There you go. That's the one. So he went to, do you guys all know the story? Maybe? No. He went to the industrialist, says, I want to know your secrets of wealth. And he says, oh, you do you? He goes, okay, here's what I want to have you do. Just look in the mirror for the next 30 days, and you just have to say one thing. And he says, you just look yourself in the eye in the mirror and say, I'm going to beat that old man. He goes, seriously? That's all I have to do? He goes, yeah. He meant beat him financially, not beat him up. And so he goes, okay, piece of cake. So he goes home, does it every day, 29 days. No sweat. Day 30, looks himself in the eye. He could not choke out the words. and he had to go out I think he lived in the country, walk the fields and pastures for 8 hours, then come back, look himself in the eye, and say, I'm going to beat that old man. And so then the man comes back and goes, okay, great, now I'll tell you. Because he thought, why would I waste my breath if you don't believe in yourself? You know, there's the power of the healer, the receptivity of the patient. So there's the power of the rich old guy and the receptivity of the student. And that the job of the student was to develop his receptivity first. So you'll sometimes hear about that. You need to break through, and that's where affirmations come in. You keep working it and working it. I have a story. It's online. Sometimes I forget what's online, what's in the book too. But years ago, because my late husband worked in, he made kitchen cabinets, and later he made meditation benches and musical instruments. But whenever you're living rurally, let me tell you, living rurally, working a job like that, when there's a recession, boom, you feel it. And when that happened for 3 different times, he finally said, this isn't the recession's fault. This is my karma. And I'm going to do this affirmation. There's a long affirmation from Ananda for prosperity. I'm going to do this affirmation until this karma is gone. And he said he would do it 30 times a day in the shower, driving the truck, he just had memorized it. But he said in the beginning it was like moving cobwebs of disbelief from his mind. Because if you've been in near bankruptcy 3 times, you start to believe it. And then what's interesting, he definitely did overcome that karma. And there's a long story there, so I'll leave it. But what was of interest to me is that same thing, the cobwebs of disbelief from the mind. And so it's the same thing when we're working on healing ourselves. You're needing to go through, and when you hit that wall, go past. You say, okay, now I'm going to keep going. Because some people say, affirmations don't work for me. It's like, no, you work for the affirmation. You've got to work with it, because you're pushing against almost that cushion of air, that resistance, to finally to the other side. And you want to believe in that perfected self. Because you sometimes see there's these phrases, I am whole, I am perfect. Well, you think that perfected vision, that perfected self, and you're saying it from that place. So I think I'll do the heart center one with you, and then we'll stand up and stretch. So right now, sit up comfortably, and I'll read how he writes the intro. He says, close your eyes and concentrate upon the heart throb. You actually want to, you can either touch your heart or just feel that your heart is beating in your chest. He wants you to really focus on your heart center, your heart chakra. So concentrate upon the heart throb and repeat with devotion and feeling. And I'll have you repeat this. Thou art love.
Thou art love.
Thou art love.
Thou art love.
I am thine.
I am thine.
Thou art mine.
Thou art mine.
I am thine.
I am thine.
Thou art mine.
Thou art mine.
I am love.
I am love.
I am love.
I am love.
Love is healthy.
Love is healthy.
Love is perfect.
Love is perfect.
I am healthy.
I am healthy.
I am love.
I am love.
I am whole.
I am whole.
I am perfect.
I am perfect.
And we'll do it 2 more times. When you're at home, though, with this one, you might want to keep going and going and going sometime if you feel a connection with it. Thou art love.
Thou art love.
Thou art love.
Thou art love.
I am thine.
I am thine.
Thou art mine.
Thou art mine.
I am thine.
I am thine.
Thou art mine.
Thou art mine.
I am love.
I am love.
I am love.
I am love.
Love is healthy.
Love is healthy.
Love is perfect.
Love is perfect.
I am healthy.
I am healthy.
I am love.
I am love.
I am whole.
I am whole.
I am perfect.
I am perfect.
Feel that awakening energy. We'll do it one more time. raise your hand, just staying with that inward space, but if you have a prayer request that we would enter, just stay with that state. Okay, I'm going to ask the lady in the back. Just stay with this a little longer, because one thing Yogananda talks about is prayers. He says meditate first, and then you're going to bring that energy to the prayer. Actually, I'm going to instead ask the lady who asked about self-healing. I think that would be good to pray for you. What's your name? Sally? Valerie, okay. We're going to do the 3-part prayer for Valerie. I'm not going to ask her unless she wants to share, but you don't have to share.
Just having a lot of basic issues, heartburn, and email issues, anxiety, fears, and
Okay.
hormonal issues. Just like a bite, just my life, just like out of whack.
Okay. So, yeah, I was feeling to do the 3-part prayer. So first we pray for the body, then we pray for the mind, then we pray for the soul. So it's the same as the other prayer, but it allows us to focus on the 3 aspects. The one thing I want to, and it's, we'll do the Divine Mother prayer, and then we go, om. When we pray for the mind, though, and for this I have to bring you out a little bit, we rotate the fists. It's as though generate a positive upward movement from this, emotional center up. Because what is mental healing? It's a more positive can-do feeling. So this generates it. This is Yogananda's technique. No, I didn't make this up. So, and then we hold up the hands and send om at that point. So first body, om. Then I'll lead you through the prayer for the mind. Then, but you're moving up. See, if you go backwards, it feels weird. Your hand, the one closest to the body is moving up, and then the soul will again be om. Okay, so we'll pray for Valerie. Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent, Thou art in all Thy children, Thou art in Valerie, manifest Thy healing presence, in her body. If you're ever leading a group, you can linger a little bit at this point, or you can proceed to the next one. You wouldn't linger a long time, usually. So let's do for the mind, Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent, Thou art in all Thy children, Thou art in Valerie, manifest Thy healing presence, in her mind. Rotating fist. Holding up the hands. And for the soul, Divine Mother, Thou art omnipresent, Thou art in all Thy children, Thou art in Valerie, manifest Thy healing presence, in her soul. Oh. absorb that, relax and feel, and I'll take questions before we have a break. For any of you who ever lead any kind of group healing, this little bit of time resting between prayers is good to absorb. As Yogananda was saying, the instrument is blessed by what flows through it. And you want people to be in tune with how they feel as a healer, you might say. And I always usually, when I get into longer prayers like this afternoon, we'll do a little bit of that, and I teach a very safe zone, hands-on healing. For practice, we just do a shoulder thing. But when you get into the longer prayers or something else, I'll have people like listen inside, and you put your hands down when you're ready. You know, it's like if you're leading a 20-minute prayer, which I do sometimes. I'll just leave it to people, if they feel complete, to just rest their hands in their lap. So we either pray for world conditions or for an individual, etc. So sometimes we get into these longer prayers. In a class like this, I only usually keep it for like 5 minutes going because there's different levels going on at the same time. But that digestion, that receiving of the energy after you pray, it's an important part of prayer. So let everybody feel the blessings of that. Are there questions before? Okay. Oh, yes.
I have a question. Was Napoleon Hill or maybe Mother Teresa an avatar?
No. But, that's a good question. There's very few avatars, usually. But Napoleon Hill wrote an interesting book in which I do think avatars are, I don't know the fine print on all these things, masters, avatars, visited him. He wrote a book called, do you know his other book? What's the name of it? No, but his other book. He wrote it 25 years later.
17 Principles.
Oh, no, oh, geez, I better remember the name of the book because you guys aren't remembering. I thought it's called, Grow Rich with Peace of Mind. And in it, he wrote about what happened 25 years later. Like he had been doing this thing, so you'd think, well, why do the angels care about growing rich? It's not about that. I mean, people do need to at least be prosperous enough to live without strain and all that. And but he was working so much with the mind that's actually a holy thing. How he was helping a lot of people in the culture with that. So somehow, at the end of these 25 years, or when he wrote it, these masters of light appeared to him and asked him to write this next book. And it was just a refinement of everything he had written. It wasn't anything changed, but he was bringing in this holier light. It's called Grow Rich with Peace of Mind. Because I think he wanted to make sure, the other one was so affirmative and, to beat that old man. It wasn't about the opulence. It was about living in peace with what you need. One thing, Yogananda had a prayer they shared with people, a prayer that they could do. It's like, I'm thinking of too many things. Bless me. One was, I care not what I may permanently possess, but give me the power to draw to myself what I need when I need it. It's that thing, that kind of prosperity, that divine magnetic answering of the needs. And so it can go, so somebody who has a family, they're going to need an actual house. That's why they're called householders. But then a wandering sadhu, we might say, still he needs divine intervention too. Like, I need a really good tree to sit under right now, either to escape the heat or the rain or whatever. The Buddha provides, that thing. So it's always happening within the context of your life, that you're drawing on the divine. So divine prosperity would be that within the context of what's ever helping you the most, almost going back to that concept of soul union. So somebody who maybe in another life had been a monk and took vows of poverty, that might have been helping them, but if in another life they're a father and they're still subconsciously living by the vows of poverty, it's actually maybe working against them, you know. So does that help? Oh, and Mother Teresa was a saint, most definitely, but not an avatar, but I could go into it more, but I don't think I will. But I mean, she's hugely inspirational and such an example. So, any other questions?
I have a question, but I'm not sure if you're gonna address it later.
Oh, it's all right.
In terms of healing work, what do you find is the most, or you found the most effective way to protect yourself as a healer from energies of the people you're working with?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, we'll go into it more maybe, but I think it's a good time. This helps us digest the morning. One that I've been, that sense of invocation, like I was doing, like even, so depending on the parameters of your work, you're not going to need, you can at least pray privately for yourself in the morning before you start your practice. And just ask that the divine blesses you, guides you as you go through your day. Sometimes a healer will get an inspiration in the morning, just going over like their little list, even a short prayer for each of the people coming to you that day. And you might have an understanding of what you're going to either watch for, listen for, focus on. And there might be a little surprise that comes, like, oh, I see. And the second one is to have something holy in your office. Even don't have your office be too generic. It doesn't have, I mean, these are beautiful. But you don't need larger than life picture in your healing room, because that might overwhelm some people. But you can even have, like within your view on a little shelf, a picture of divine personage that's holy to you. And I think it's good to have an avatar or master or something that represents Divine Mother in a pretty clear way, that you could actually mentally, you might be talking to the person or getting ready to do the work, and you can glance at it and it kind of renews the prayer that you had that morning. And it can just, like even in my own healing office, I have some very large pictures, but when I'm actually sitting with someone there, because I have a large office, one's from where I do my computer work, and the other one's where if someone comes for an appointment, what they're looking at behind me is a beautiful tapestry of flowers. Because I'm just wanting them to not like be having Jesus staring down at them or whatever. I love it. I mean, but I just feel like in a healing thing, you want them at ease. But there's a bigger than that picture of Jesus and Yogananda on the other end. It's not like I'm hiding from it, but when they're in that chair, they're just seeing the flowers, unless they look that way. But in my view, on the little bookshelf, I have a little altar, because I might be talking to them, and sometimes I'll just glance and then go. And so all those things actually help your aura, like I was talking about with the book. Even just looking into the eyes of these sacred pictures, or the eyes of a photograph of a saint, your own aura gets bigger. The other thing is if it's a painting of a saint, it may be if that painting reminds you of devotion, then it also does that. If it reminds you of the light of that saint, then it does. And it's almost automatic with the photographs, though, when we measure it. Even if people didn't know it was pretty hard to find someone who didn't know who Yogananda was, but if we managed to find one and we tested, their aura got as big as this big temple we have at Ananda. Maybe they had just showed up for something like healthy vegetarian cooking, right? And I said, we measure, it's like, oh, it's our lucky day, we can measure their aura. And it would get as big, because there's, the eyes are the window of the soul. The eyes of the avatar are enlightened with the infinite. So your eyes are also the window of the soul, and they're gazing on it, so you're receiving some of that instantaneously. So that helps. And if you're not in such a place that you have that, the other thing to do before you do any healing, and you're going to do the prayer, also as though make almost an aura or bubble of light around, within the room, within yourself, around the whole thing. So you're protecting not only yourself, but the other, for whatever, because your energy's open when you're healing. And, but primarily it's that opening prayer, closing prayer, even if it's private to yourself. And what I do talk about in the book, even when, depending on the nature of your healing, if they're coming to you in any kind of way as a spiritual healer of any sort, and if they're coming to you and you're a medical doctor, then you wouldn't do this unless you had to give them some very bad news or something. But it's good to even say, I'm going to pray. You can say that, but if it's not appropriate in your healing work, then you just take a moment to pray. And just go ahead and take that moment for yourself, and they'll understand. They'll actually respect you for it. If you just like, you see, and they'll realize, oh, something's happening here. That energy is what brings the magic. Because if you go, even for something as simple as a foot massage, if someone is connected to that greater light, and then they go to massage your feet, there's going to be energy coming through your hands to that person, more so than even if they're big, strong, whatever. They're, you're going to get much more out of it if someone has tuned into the energy beyond the body, and it's going to come through their hands. So you just take that moment, and it's going to help you. It's going to help them. I will teach you something. If you feel you're particularly prone to feeling people's energy after a session, okay, so this can be a nice stand-up exercise for everyone, but I want to make sure that you can see me. So this is an exercise for protecting the aura, making the aura stronger. Oh, and at some point I'm going to have Marianne lead this other exercise. But this one is simple. Actually, I'm losing my voice. Can you lead the Om Tat spot?
Sure.
And so watch Marianne. So he'll explain it, but it's basically
Om Tat Sat is the Trinity. So the Trinity of the East. Om Tat Sat. Om is the mother, Tat is the son, Sat is the father. So it's like Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
and so now do a deep concentration.
Om Tat Sat. 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 Om Tat Sat.
Do it silently, because if you keep, now do it the same focus, but imagine, and bring the palms all the way together. Om. And then touch them and back, and then feel that you're making a circle of light, that your hands are magnetically making this aura stronger. See if you can feel that as you do it. And you can feel like if you're in a city situation, which you always are, and you needed to kind of quickly do this, you can just even consciously do this as though you're just playing with your hands, but you would want to do this. So in your healing, you'd want to do this beforehand. That affirmation that I taught, I will with my own will help you too, because it'll, by drawing the energy up to here, it's actually strengthening all your chakras. And Are you, is this your first day here, or are you?
I've been here before.
Okay. Because there's other things that we can talk about with making the chakras themselves stronger and brighter, and that therefore helps your aura. But this affirmation or anything that lifts your mind to the spiritual eye will be good, and then this Om Tat Sat will be very good. Okay. Hi.
There's an LA variation of Om Tat Sat where after I get in my car, I do it and extend the aura all around the front and back of the car.
Oh, like you imagine that? That's a good idea. Do it for real. Do it this way, and then do it in the car, because this is helps your actual aura. But I think that's very good, because you're in the cars so much. Any other questions? Okay.
Sometimes it's not really matter what you say, or how you do it, like for what you feel a browser. If you in your heart and a lot of energy, you can just by listening.
Oh, like Bratza, is that what you're saying?
Right.
What's his name? Bratzo? Bratza. Yeah, he's for real. If you can do it, I mean, he's really got something. So, and yes, an avatar could do that. But I'm teaching the techniques Yogananda gave, because I don't recommend that women go around staring at strangers' eyes. Leads to confusion. I was really blissed out in this chapel in Assisi. And then my group was gone, the pilgrimage group, and I was like, oh, where'd they go? So I turned to this man, but I was still in the bliss, and to ask him the time, and he fell in love with me immediately. It was amazing, and he's following me all around, I'm like, what just happened here? So I stick with the prayer. I was younger then, so that explains part of it. But anyways, it's when you're being a vessel of light, and then you look at someone, they get it. They might misinterpret what's happening here. And so my husband said, I'm going to give you a travel dictionary. It's going to say in 25 languages, my husband will kill you. He was actually a very peaceful person, but I thought, this girl needs a travel dictionary like that. So anyways, on that note, we can have a great time. Dharma Devi Narayana will explain about that.